Sometimes the world feels loud, like everything around you is demanding a reaction. Someone says something careless, life throws you off balance, and suddenly your emotions are running the show. I get it. We've all been there. But here's the truth no one teaches you growing up. You don't have to react to everything. You get to choose. And the moment you realize that everything changes, there is power in pausing. A deep breath, a moment of silence, a second where you just let yourself feel without letting your feelings take the steering wheel. That tiny moment is where strength is built. Not the flashy kind of strength people post online, but the quiet, internal kind that holds your world together. Pausing before you respond is one of the most underestimated forms of emotional strength, and yet it is the very thing that can protect your peace, your relationships, and your sense of self. When something triggers you, an argument, a misunderstanding, a harsh comment, or even your own overthinking, your instinct is usually to react immediately. It's almost automatic. Your body tenses, your heartbeat changes, your emotions rise, and before you even realize it, words slip out or actions follow that you later replay in your mind, wishing you could take them back. But there is a quiet, powerful alternative that most people don't practice the pause. A simple moment of stillness that allows your awareness to step forward before your emotions take over. That pause is more than silence. It's space. Space to breathe, space to evaluate, space to protect yourself. When you pause, you give your mind the chance to catch up with your emotions instead of being dragged by them. It's like taking one step back so you can actually see the whole picture. Instead of reacting to just one moment, you shift out of survival mode and into clarity. You stop operating from impulse and start operating from intention. And intention is where your real control lies. In that pause, you start asking yourself questions that impulsive reactions never give you room to consider. Why does this bother me? Is this worth my energy? What am I actually feeling right now? What outcome do I want? These questions don't show weakness. They show maturity. They show that you're choosing to respond with purpose instead of being tossed around by temporary emotions. And the truth is, emotions are always temporary, even the strongest ones. But the consequences of your reactions can last far longer. Pausing doesn't mean you're letting someone win. It doesn't mean you're ignoring what happened or pretending you're okay. It simply means you're choosing to handle the moment on your terms, not in the heat of the moment when your emotions are louder than your logic. This pause can be one deep breath, or it can be a walk, or an hour of silence before responding to a message that hurt you. That space isn't avoidance, it's self-respect. It's the act of saying, I am not going to give away my power just because something triggered me. People often think reacting quickly makes them strong. It doesn't. Reacting quickly usually means reacting emotionally, defensively, or without clarity. True strength is calm. True strength is in being able to feel the rush of emotion, anger, fear, frustration, sadness, and still choosing not to let it dictate your behavior. It's not easy. It's a skill you build. Every time you choose to pause, you are training your emotional system to stay grounded. You are teaching yourself that you don't have to be controlled by the moment. You get to control the moment, and something shifts when you make pausing a habit. You begin to realize that half the things that used to anger you no longer deserve a reaction. You notice that some arguments you used to jump into don't even tempt you anymore. You see how much peace you gain when you don't give instant reactions to people who want attention or to situations that don't deserve your energy. You become more thoughtful, more confident, and more emotionally steady. You become someone who people can't easily shake or provoke because you aren't operating on autopilot anymore. You're operating from emotional intelligence. This pause also gives you the ability to communicate better. Instead of reacting defensively, you respond with clarity and intention. You speak from your truth instead of your wounds. You're able to express what you feel without letting the emotion distort the message. And that changes everything, your relationships, your decisions, your mental well-being. People start to sense that you're grounded, not because you're emotionless, but because you're emotionally aware. Most importantly, pausing before reacting rebuilds your relationship with yourself. It teaches you to trust your inner stability. It shows you that you don't have to be the person who gets overwhelmed by every emotion. You can be the person who feels deeply and still chooses wisely. You begin to see the difference between something that needs your response and something that only needs your silence. And that distinction alone can change your life. The pause is small, but the power inside it is massive. It's the moment where you stop being controlled and start being in control. It's where you reclaim your strength, your peace, and your emotional balance. It's where you learn that you don't always need to react. You only need to choose what aligns with your calm, your truth, and your inner power. Detaching from the moment doesn't mean disconnecting from your emotions or pretending you don't care. It means creating emotional distance long enough to see the situation clearly instead of being swallowed by it. When something happens that triggers you, someone's behavior, a harsh message, a disappointing moment, your mind instantly tightens around it. You replay it, analyze it, feel it deeply, and sometimes you let it define the rest of your day. But detaching teaches you something powerful. Not every moment deserves that much of you. Not every situation is worth holding on to. And not every emotion needs to be amplified just because it feels intense right now. When you detach, you choose to step out of the emotional storm and view things from a calmer, higher perspective. It's like walking out of a loud room and suddenly realizing how much noise you were absorbing without noticing. So often we react to situations simply because we're stuck in them. Too close, too emotional, too consumed. But when you mentally step back, the moment stops controlling you. You become the observer instead of the one drowning in the situation. And from that place, everything makes more sense. Detaching isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's giving yourself permission to not over-absorb every energy, comment, attitude, or emotion that comes your way. People will project their frustrations, insecurities, or misunderstandings onto you. Situations will unfold in ways you didn't expect. Emotions will flare up, but none of that means you're obligated to carry it all. You can care without clinging. You can feel without falling apart. You can acknowledge something without letting it take over your inner world. When you learn to detach, you start noticing how much peace you gain from simply letting moments pass instead of gripping them so tightly. You stop reacting to every tone, every message, every misunderstanding. You stop assuming everything is personal. You stop letting someone else's mood or mistake become your emotional responsibility. And most importantly, you stop giving away your power just because something felt uncomfortable in the moment. Detachment also gives you the space to understand what actually matters. Sometimes what feels huge right now won't matter in a day. Sometimes what seems like an attack is really just someone hurting. Sometimes the thing you're stressing about isn't even yours to fix. When you detach, you see all of this more clearly. You realize that you can choose what deserves your energy and what simply doesn't. And here's something you learn only after practicing detachment. You become emotionally lighter. You stop carrying the weight of every moment on your back. You stop replaying conversations all night. You stop assuming the worst. You begin protecting your peace not by fighting everything, but by refusing to let everything touch you the same way it used to. Detaching also helps you make better decisions. When you're too emotionally involved, your judgment gets clouded. You might say things you don't mean, act out of hurt, or create outcomes you don't actually want. But when you detach, even for a moment, you see the situation for what it truly is, not what your emotional reaction is telling you it is. You become more rational, more grounded, more intentional. You start choosing responses that reflect who you are, not how the moment made you feel. This kind of emotional detachment doesn't happen instantly. It's a practice. It's learning to breathe through the emotion instead of acting on it. It's learning to watch your thoughts instead of letting them drag you into overthinking. It's learning to say, this is happening, but it doesn't have to take over my entire mood. And slowly, moment by moment, you start building emotional strength that doesn't depend on everything around you being perfect. Detaching from the moment is not about running away. It's about rising above. It's about holding on to your inner calm even when things outside of you are chaotic. It's about remembering that your peace is too valuable to hand over to every situation that bumps into your day. And once you master that, life changes. You start moving differently. You stop reacting to every little thing. You become harder to trigger. You become more selective with your emotional energy. And you become someone who can walk through challenging moments without losing yourself in them. In the end, detachment is freedom. Freedom from emotional overwhelm. Freedom from unnecessary stress. Freedom from taking everything personally. It's the ability to stay centered, even when the moment tries to pull you in. And that ability is one of the most powerful emotional skills you will ever develop. Understanding the root of your emotions is one of the most transformative things you can do for yourself because it shifts you from simply feeling to actually knowing. And once you understand your emotions, you're no longer controlled by them. You're guided by them. Most people react based on the surface, feeling anger, jealousy, sadness, insecurity, frustration. But those emotions are never the true starting point. They're the final reaction to something deeper, something older, something quieter that you haven't examined yet. When you trace an emotion back to its origin, you start uncovering why you react the way you do. You start realizing that your triggers aren't random. They're signals, they're messages, they're invitations to understand yourself on a deeper level. It's easy to get swept up in the intensity of an emotion and forget to look beneath it. For example, anger often isn't anger. It's hurt, disappointment, or the feeling of not being understood. Jealousy often isn't jealousy. It's fear of losing something or not feeling good enough. Anxiety often isn't anxiety. It's pressure, overthinking, or past experiences trying to repeat themselves. If you only focus on the surface, you end up reacting to the wrong thing. But when you pause and ask yourself, what's actually happening inside me right now? You start peeling back layers you didn't know existed. Understanding your emotions requires honesty, sometimes uncomfortable honesty. You have to admit to yourself what you feel, even if it's not flattering. Maybe you're triggered because something made you feel insecure. Maybe someone's comment touched an old wound. Maybe your reaction has nothing to do with the present moment and everything to do with something you never healed from. This kind of self-awareness doesn't make you weak. It makes you powerful. Because when you finally identify what's underneath, the emotion loses its power to control your reactions. A lot of emotional chaos comes from misinterpreting our own feelings. You think you're upset at someone else, but you're really upset at yourself. You think you're angry at a situation, but you're actually disappointed by your expectations. You think you're stressed about the present, but it's a familiar pattern from your past resurfacing. When you don't understand the root, the emotion feels overwhelming. But when you dig deeper, the intensity softens. The emotion becomes something you can work with instead of something you fight against. Understanding the root of your emotions also helps you communicate more clearly. When you know what you're actually feeling, you can express it without lashing out, shutting down, or misplacing that emotion onto someone else. Instead of reacting defensively, you can say things like, "This made me feel overlooked," or "I felt insecure in this moment," or "I'm reacting this way because it reminds me of something I haven't healed from yet." These kinds of statements deepen connections, reduce misunderstandings, and help you show up as your true self instead of your emotional impulses. This self-awareness also helps you break patterns. Maybe you always shut down in conflict, or maybe you always react instantly, or maybe you get overwhelmed too easily. These patterns aren't flaws, they're learned responses. And once you understand where they come from, you can start unlearning them. You can replace reactive habits with conscious choices. You can shift from "I can't control my emotions" to "I understand my emotions, so I control what I do with them." But the most beautiful part of understanding your emotions is that it brings compassion to yourself. You no longer judge yourself for reacting. You no longer label your emotions as bad or dramatic. You begin to see them as parts of you that just want to be acknowledged. You start treating your feelings with softness instead of shame. You realize that your emotions aren't trying to ruin your life. They're trying to guide you toward healing, growth, and self-connection. This level of emotional understanding makes you more grounded, more confident, and more in control. You become someone who doesn't fear your feelings anymore. Instead, you listen to them. You learn from them. You let them show you what you need, what you value, what you fear, and what you're ready to outgrow. Emotional mastery begins with emotional understanding, and when you can finally recognize where your emotions come from, you're no longer reacting blindly. You're responding with awareness, intention, and wisdom. In the end, understanding the root of your emotions isn't about being perfect or never feeling overwhelmed. It's about knowing yourself deeply enough that you no longer get lost in your reactions. You rise above them, you observe them, and you choose what to do from a place of clarity instead of chaos. That kind of emotional understanding is one of the greatest forms of personal freedom you will ever experience. Turning emotional control into personal power is one of the most liberating transformations you can make in your life, because it shifts you from being someone who is constantly affected by the world to someone who affects the world with intention. Most people move through life reacting to everything around them. People's moods, unexpected problems, stressful moments, disappointments, misunderstandings. They get pulled in every direction by whatever emotion hits them first. But when you learn to stay centered, when you learn to manage your emotional responses with maturity and self-awareness, you unlock a kind of strength that doesn't depend on circumstances. It comes from within, and no one can take it away. Emotional control isn't about suppressing how you feel. It's not about pretending you're unbothered or acting like nothing affects you. Real emotional control is about acknowledging your emotions without letting them control your behavior. It's the difference between feeling anger and becoming anger, between feeling hurt and letting that hurt dictate your decisions. When you can feel deeply but still respond wisely, you move from emotional chaos to emotional leadership. You begin to lead yourself instead of letting the moment lead you. There is a quiet power in staying calm when things don't go your way. Not because you're numbing yourself, but because you understand that reacting impulsively won't solve anything. It will only escalate the problem or drain your energy. When you choose calmness, you choose clarity. When you choose clarity, you choose control. And when you choose control, you become someone who is grounded no matter what storm is happening around you. People often underestimate the strength it takes to stay composed. Anyone can explode, lash out, shut down, or act impulsively. That's easy. But staying anchored when your emotions are trying to pull you in every direction, that takes courage, that takes emotional maturity, that takes a deep commitment to your own peace. And the moment you start practicing this, you begin to notice something powerful. Situations that used to shake you no longer have the same effect. People who once triggered you no longer have that power over you. The noise around you starts to fade because your inner voice becomes stronger. Emotional control also gives you something priceless: self-respect. When you control your reactions, you stop betraying yourself in heated moments. You stop saying things you don't mean or doing things you regret. You stop letting anger, fear, or insecurity speak for you. Instead, you show up in a way that reflects who you truly are, not who you momentarily become under stress. That consistency builds confidence. You start trusting yourself more. You start realizing that you don't have to break down or react wildly to prove you feel something. Your calmness becomes your signature strength. And there's another layer to this power. Emotional control affects how people see you, treat you, and respond to you. When you're someone who stays composed, people naturally respect you more. They trust you more. They come to you for guidance. You become someone whose presence feels steady, someone who doesn't create chaos but calms it. You stand out because emotional control is rare and people can feel it. But the biggest transformation happens internally. When you master your emotions, life becomes easier. Not because challenges disappear, but because you handle them differently. You stop drowning in overthinking. You stop spiraling into self-doubt. You stop giving every problem the power to ruin your day. You stop letting other people's words, opinions, or behaviors dictate your self-worth. You become someone who chooses peace, even when the moment tries to steal it. And that peace becomes your superpower. Emotional control also means you start responding instead of reacting. A reaction is automatic, fast, emotional, and often messy. A response is intentional, calm, thoughtful, grounded. Responding means you choose the outcome instead of being dragged into one. You decide what energy you bring into a situation. You decide how much power a moment gets. You decide who you are in the middle of pressure, and that is personal power, the ability to choose your behavior regardless of the situation. Imagine facing conflict without losing yourself. Imagine handling stress without falling apart. Imagine being triggered and still choosing grace. Imagine having emotions without letting them hijack your day. That kind of emotional control doesn't make you cold. It makes you unstoppable. In the end, turning emotional control into power is about becoming the strongest, most grounded version of yourself. It's about understanding that you don't have to match the energy around you. You can rise above it. You can set the tone. You can choose peace instead of reacting to chaos. And when you do that, you become someone who isn't shaped by the moment, but someone who shapes the moment. That is where your true power lies.